Hey everyone, it's Jananie and welcome back to my channel, This Story Ain't Over. Today we are doing a video that I've been looking forward to doing since the beginning of this year because I feel like this trend was really popular in 2020 and I wanted to do it for the books I read in 2021. So today we are going to be tier ranking all the books that I read in 2021. I read a total of 52 books this year so far. I have like a couple days left of the year when I'm filming this, so I might finish one more book, but I'm not super concerned about including it in this video. I've done a few of these tier ranking videos before. If you're not familiar with tier ranking, it's basically when you organize different things based off these tiers that you've made and like ranking them. I feel like it's pretty self-explanatory, but if you haven't already, I have a few tier ranking videos already, one for fantasy recs and then one for contemporary recs as well, so you should definitely go check them out. But today I thought that this would be a really great way of looking back on 2021 and all the books that I read. I've already told you my top 10 favorite books of the year, so you can go check out that video, but this is sort of to look back on my reading overall and how good it really was. I feel like I had a really nice reading year. I feel like I didn't read that many books as some of my previous years, but it was still a really decent amount with the amount of free time I had. And I also feel like I read a lot of really amazing and great books this year. So without further ado, we're gonna jump into this tier ranking. Okay, so on my screen I have the tier maker ready, so the books I read in 2021, and I decided to do 6 different tiers. These are a little bit different from the ones I've done in my previous tier making videos, but starting from the top, we've got my God tier, which is basically all the books that I absolutely love. These books compare to no others, and they have a special place in my heart. The next tier is the Makes My Heart Ache tier, which is basically what I've reserved for any book that wasn't quite God tier, like an ultimate fave, but it hit me in all the right ways. And whenever I think back on it, I think of it fondly, and I cared for the characters and for the plot and whatever else. So it has a special place in my heart as well, just not as special as the God tier books. And then we've got my new weird little favorite tier, which is basically the tier reserved for anything that is like basically a new fave, but like isn't objectively something I would say would be a new fave for many people, but it's something that I personally really love, and it might have some of its flaws, but I love it for specific reasons. And then the next tier is my thoroughly enjoyed tier, which is basically any other book that I enjoyed during the year. That wasn't a disappointment, but wasn't like a favorite, just one I thoroughly enjoyed. And then the second last tier is my just okay tier, which is pretty self-explanatory. It was just okay. That's all I really have in terms of feelings or opinions about it. And then the final tier is the DNF/disappointment tier. So this is just reserved for any books that I DNF'd, which means did not finish, and any books that I was really disappointed by and had sort of high expectations for and just didn't deliver. So now that we know all of our tiers, let's jump into actually tier rankings. So I'm just gonna scroll down here and you can see these are all of the 52 books that I read during this year, and I guess we'll just go from like the top left corner and proceed from there to rank. So we're starting with Ace of Spades by Farida Abike-Iyamide. This book was fantastic in terms of the thriller elements. I really enjoyed it. I think it had some really great discussions about race and privilege, but I do think it fell flat for me in some aspects, especially with like the romances and sort of the actions of the characters. So I feel like I thoroughly enjoyed it, but it definitely wasn't like a new favorite. Next we have Actor Age Eve Brown by Talia Hibbert. This one is tricky for me. I feel like I really enjoyed this one, but I think with any romance books, there's like a point where like I kind of get bored with them once the couple gets together. Like once the tension and buildup ends, I'm like, okay, even if you break up, I know you're gonna end up together in the end, which is like a staple of romance, which is fine. But I just sort of start to lose interest in the plot. But this one was awesome. I really loved the autism rep in both the characters and also just like the main character's own personality. I feel like she's really relatable if you are like in your 20s and sort of figuring things out. So I'm gonna put this under like, I'm torn between thoroughly enjoyed and also a new weird little fave, because I do think this one was one of my new favorite romance books, but I also don't think it's like a major fave. For now, we're gonna leave it on thoroughly enjoyed and we'll see later. Next is All's Well by Mona Awad, and oh my god, this one's also another tricky one because I'm tempted to put this on new weird little fave because I actually really did enjoy this one more than I expected. This one basically follows a college professor with chronic pain who's trying to put on a production of All's Well That Ends Well by Shakespeare, but her students are bent on putting a production of Macbeth. And along the way, the main character is visited by these 3 supernatural figures who basically give her a supernatural cure for all of her problems, and she sort of slowly descends into madness, is what I would say. And I just love the whole, you know, build up and the way that the story went, and I just, yeah, really enjoyed it unexpectedly. So I'm actually gonna put this as like a new weird little fave. Again, this is one that I don't think has like major wide appeal, but I really enjoyed it. Okay, the next one is An Emotion of Great Delight by Tara Mafi. Oh my god, as you guys know, I absolutely love Tara Mafi's, you know, contemporaries. I loved Very Large Expanse of Sea. This one was no different. I absolutely loved it. I don't know how I would rank the two in comparison with each other because I feel like they're very, very different and I love them for very different reasons, but I absolutely loved this one because it hit me in the feels, and I feel like I related to Shadi's very sad character in many, many ways, and she was just like the teen that I was when I was younger, I feel like. So this one I think is gonna go into Makes My Heart Ache. I don't think it's quite God tier, but I do think it hit me in all the right ways. I think of the characters fondly, and it's just one of those like top tier faves. Oh my god, and I can't wait. Oh, this is so tricky. I feel like this one is very specific. I don't know that everyone would love this series or this book, but basically it is a duology. It starts with Anna K, and it's basically following this like wealthy, half Korean, half American girl who is from like the Upper East Side. I think it has very like Gossip Girl vibes to it. And you're seeing these various different teens who are all very wealthy and there are different relationships going on. But it's also a bit of a retelling of Anna Karenina by Leo Tolstoy. So I also really enjoyed that aspect to it, but I don't think it's like something that everyone's gonna love, but I really enjoyed it. So I'm gonna put this under my new weird little fave. Not necessarily new because this is the sequel to the first book, so it's not new, but it is one of my weird little faves, and I do think it deserves more appreciation. Okay, the next book is Anxious People by Frederick Bachman. This one was a great one. I read this entirely through the audiobook. I believe there's a movie coming out for it too, which I'm really excited to check out because I think it's like the perfect concept for a movie, but yeah. Overall, really enjoyed it. It basically follows a bank heist gone wrong, which turns into a hostage situation. And it's just a really interesting look at different people and their different circumstances and what they're all feeling and how we're all a bit of anxious people. And I really enjoyed it. I don't think it was like a new favorite, but thoroughly enjoyed it, so it's gonna go here. Alrighty, the next book is the second Arasha book, Arasha and the Song of Death by Rashi Chakshi. This is definitely a series that is like close to my heart because I just really appreciate the fact that it's a middle grade series featuring a South Asian main character, and this is something I never got when I was a kid. So this one in particular, like I thoroughly enjoyed it, but it's like not a new favorite, I would say, just because I wish I was younger when I was reading it. I think that's like the main thing. I wish I was younger when I was reading these books because I feel like I would have held them a lot closer. But regardless, I just love like what they represent, and I think it's like a fun and enjoyable middle grade read. Alrighty, the next book is Beach Read by Emily Henry, and y'all, I love this book so, so much. As you may know, it was on my top 10 list for this year, along with the other book by the author, People We Meet on Vacation, and this was just a really fantastic romance between two writers, and it had some like elements of dealing with grief, and it had a little bit of like a hate to love, friends to love type thing, and overall, just like all the vibes. I think this one goes into Makes My Heart Ache because it just hits me in all the feels, but it's not like quite God tier. Okay, the next one is Blackwater Sister by Zen Cho. This is something that I read for the Overachiever magazine book club, and it was fantastic. It had so many interesting elements to it. I do think it's not like my favorite, and it was a bit of a slog to get through. It's a big book, and it has like so many different moving parts and some really crazy plot twists and stuff. But I think it was a really fun book and had so many elements of the main character's background involved into it. It involves like a ghost and like a goddess and a jobless gay 20-something dealing with all the things. And it was just fantastic, but I don't think it was a new favorite, so I think I'm gonna put it in thoroughly enjoyed. Next we have Certain Dark Things by Silvia Moreno Garcia, who is probably one of my new favorite authors ever. And this one is her vampire noir novel set in Mexico City. And it was so interesting and cool, like with the different species of vampires and just the way that the story went. I actually really, really love this one, and I just love Silvia Moreno Garcia in general. I'm not 100% sure where I would put this one. I think I'm gonna put it in new weird little fave because it is definitely like a weird book, but one that I wish more people would like read and appreciate because it's quite cool. And it's just perfect for spooky season, like great horror elements, but also like a bit of a thriller element and like the noir element, and just overall great books. So yeah, new weird little fave. And I also just really, really love the characters. Like they were all just sweet little muffins. Okay, the next book is Chain of Iron by Cassandra Clare, and y'all, this one, we probably know where it's going. It's not quite God tier for me because I feel like the only Cassandra Clare books that are God tier these days for me are like Infernal Devices and like the original Mortal Instruments, because they have a special place in my heart from when I was younger. But these ones are still really awesome. I definitely like the Last Hour series more than the Dark Artifices series. I do get slightly annoyed with all of the like miscommunication plot twists that happen in her books these days, but still love it. Still here for the vibes and the Shadowhunters, so it's gonna go in Makes My Heart Ache. All right, next is Charming as a Verb by Ben Philippe. This one was such a fun YA contemporary. If you are looking for like the perfect book for someone who is in like grade 12, like in their senior year of high school, this is the perfect one to give them because it just like deals a lot with figuring out your next steps and, you know, getting into the universities that you want and all of that. And I really loved the main character, Halty. He's such a charming guy. And it was just a really like fun book. And it had like a really cute romance to it as well. I do think like I got annoyed with the character towards the end with some of the decisions that they make, but like he's a teenager, so it makes sense. Loved it overall. I think it's like a good, like thoroughly enjoyable YA contemporary. Okay, the next book is Counting Down With You by Tashi Bhuiyan. This one is a really cute YA contemporary, and it features a Bangladeshi main character, I believe, and I really love the representation aspect of it and how the main character was dealing with like her sort of conservative family. But I do think like this is a book that I probably would have loved when I was like 13, but didn't really enjoy now that I'm like much older. So for me, this one was like just okay, I'm gonna say. I wish I loved it more, but I think I just wasn't as invested in the romance. It felt on the younger side for me, and like that's just a function of me reading something that is probably meant for someone a lot younger. So yeah. Okay, the next one is Days of Distraction by Alexandria Chang. And this one is like a weird little like memoir slash fiction novel. And it's honestly just fantastic. I actually really, really love this book, but I do think it's one that doesn't have like wide appeal. I think if you are Asian, you know, Asian North American, you will really relate to this book. And it has some just really interesting discussions about being a person of color in a workspace that is dominated by white people, and some interesting like ideas about what your identity means when you are surrounded by people who don't look like you. I think I really loved all those aspects, but it's also like very rooted in the main character's psyche and what she's going through. And it was just an overall interesting and like relatable book, and also told in a very matter-of-fact way. And I really enjoyed it. So yeah, it's going in my new weird little fave category. Okay, the next book is Dear Girls by Ali Wong, which is sort of a memoir that Ali Wong wrote. She's a comedian, and it's told as like these different chapters that are written as like sort of letters to her daughters, so Dear Girls, and she's sort of giving them advice on various things. So this one was actually a lot of fun. I listened to it entirely on the audiobook, and it's narrated by Ali Wong, so that was a lot of fun. I think it was just like a thoroughly enjoyable, you know, memoir type of book, and it was really funny as well because she has really funny jokes in it, and I enjoyed this one. I don't have much else to say about it. All right, the next one is Goddess in the Machine by Laura Beth Johnson. I have an entire reading vlog for this one if you want to check it out, but this one was a really fun and fantastic sci-fi, and I actually really, really enjoyed it. I loved all the twists, I loved the characters, I loved the plot and everything, and I also just really like the concept. It's basically about this 22nd century teen who goes into chronic sleep with her friends and family, and instead of waking up 100 years in the future, she wakes up 1,000 years in the future. And she is dealing with the fact that everyone thinks she's some sort of goddess because they've lost all concept of like technology. So this one I think is actually gonna go a new weird little fave. I think it was like a step above just like thoroughly enjoying it. Oh my god, the next one is Honey and Issues Guide to Fake Dating by Adiba Jagirdar. And this one, honestly, I loved so much. It was such a cute sapphic romance. It's basically following Honey and Issue. They're both these like two Bengali girls at this high school, and Honey has these like really horrible friends who won't believe her when she comes out as bisexual. And so in order to prove to them that she actually, you know, is into girls as well, she fake dates Issue at her school, and Issue has her own reasons for getting into this, and from there they sort of fake date, and it was just honestly so adorable. I loved sort of the representation as well, and it was just a really, really cute book. We did a whole launch event for the author on my channel. If you want to go check that out, we discussed our favorite South Asian works of like fiction and like movies and TV shows and that kind of thing. And we also talk about the book, which I really, really loved. This one I think is gonna actually go into Makes My Heart Ache, because like it had like a special place in my heart just seeing the representation and seeing like queer brown girls on the covers. All right, the next one is Honey Girl, and this one is like an adult contemporary romance, I would say, and this one was actually really cute. It had some really interesting characters. I really, really loved the love interest. It's a sapphic romance between two girls, and I enjoyed it. I don't think it was like a new favorite. I did expect to enjoy it a little bit more, but I don't think there was like much of a plot, which is part of the reason why I didn't enjoy it as much, but it was a really cute book. So I think it's like probably gonna go under thoroughly enjoyed. Not like bad or anything. Okay, next we have my most controversial opinion. Not really though, because a lot of people agreed with me on this opinion, but Lore by Alexandra Bracken is the next book, and this one was honestly a book that I read I think in January, and it was the biggest disappointment, I think. I had really high expectations for this book. I thought it was gonna be so, so fantastic. I do think it had like good elements to it, and I don't think it was like a horrible book, but it was definitely like not what I expected. It didn't live up to what I wanted. This one is going under disappointment. The next book is Marriage of a Thousand Lies by S.J. Sindhu. This one I mentioned in my top 10 books of 2021 video, but I just really love this one because it follows a Sri Lankan Tamil main character who is queer, and she is dealing with, you know, her very conservative family, and she's in this like fake marriage with her gay best friend, and it's got all these elements, and she's like still in love with her childhood best friend who's also a girl, and there's like that will they won't they romance. And it's got so many things to it. I do think it's like a little bit repetitive in the plot, but I love the book overall and like what the message is and the way it represents like her family dynamics. So for that reason, I really actually love this one, and I think it's gonna go under new weird little fave, I think. Or actually no, Makes My Heart Ache, because it made my heart ache. Like it hit really raw and deep. Okay, the next one is Mexican Gothic by Silvia Moreno Garcia, and honestly, oh my god, I love this one so, so much. I don't know where to rank it though, because I feel like it's like one of those top two, but I can't decide which one. I don't really read horror, and reading this one I really loved it. It is a gothic horror, so I have read some of those before, but I think I just love the way Silvia Moreno Garcia writes her characters, how vivid they are, and this one just really came alive for me. So I'm gonna say this one's actually God tier, I think. I think we're gonna put it up there. I feel like I usually reserve God tier for books that are either like really amazing plot and like totally sucked me in, or like contemporaries that like really hit me hard in like personal feels, usually. Okay, next we have Next Year in Havana by Chanel Clayton. Loved, loved, loved this book. It was the November 2021 Reading Color Book Club pick. It is a historical fiction. It is set in Cuba and follows two different timelines and talks about politics and privilege and so many amazing things, and I absolutely loved it. I think it was a really well done book. If you're looking for a historical fiction with like some romance in it, really fantastic one. And this one definitely goes into Makes My Heart Ache, because like I was crying by the end of it and felt so much for the characters and just really, really loved it by the end. All right, next we have People We Meet on Vacation by Emily Henry. I mentioned this one before when I was talking about Beach Read. Really love this one. It is a friends to lovers romance and involves like different vacations that they go on and has all of that like will they won't they angst, which I absolutely love. So this one was definitely like really up there for me, and my heart ached. I was crying by the end, and yeah, this one's gonna go into Makes My Heart Ache, I think, as well. Alrighty, the next one is Shadow and Bone by Leigh Bardugo. So I've actually read the Shadow and Bone series before, but I reread this first one before the show came out in April, I think, and I was really, really excited about the show, so I wanted to get a refresher on the book, and it was a really enjoyable time. Like, I think I reread it in like a day or two. It's a really quick read, and it was just as fantastic as I remember it. I do think like it's not the best of Leigh Bardugo's books, but it's still like one of my nostalgia favorites and just has a special place in my heart. So for that reason, it's gonna go in Makes My Heart Ache, because I absolutely love Alina and Mal. Okay, next we have Sisters of the Snake by Serena and Sasha Nanua. This is a really cute YA fantasy, South Asian inspired fantasy, and it involves like snake magic and some really cool things. I do think I don't really enjoy YA fantasy as much these days as a whole. There's like very few that have really stood out to me. This one was enjoyable and like had really great characters and interesting plot and world elements, but I don't think it was like a new favorite, but it was still really enjoyable. So for that reason, I think I'm just gonna put it in I'm gonna put it in thoroughly enjoyed. Okay, next we have The Atlas 6 by Olivia Blake, which is probably one of my favorite books of this year. I did mention it as a honorable mention in my top 10 books of 2021. It is getting traditionally published by Tor Books in March of 2022, which you should definitely go check out. It's got like a new cover. It's getting an audiobook. This was originally self-published by the author, but even this version, really fantastic and definitely goes under Makes My Heart Ache because I love these characters. Like they are so fantastic, so vivid and interesting, and I just love them so much. Like I would read endless and endless amounts of words on those characters. Okay, the next one is The Beautiful Ones by Silvia Moreno Garcia, which was another book that was like one of my favorites for 2021. It was an honorable mention. Really love this one. It definitely gives me Jane Austen vibes. It's a bit of a romance and it's got like sort of a historical-ish setting, and it also involves a little bit of magic, but like a very, very small dash of magic. This one is definitely like up there, but I don't think it's like God tier, so it's probably gonna go under Makes My Heart Ache. Okay, we've gone through most of the books. Let's keep going. So the next one is The Bronze Beast by Roshni Chakshi, which is the final book in the Gilded Wolves series, which is one of my all-time favorite series ever. So you can probably guess where this is going, but I absolutely loved this conclusion. It had a really heartbreaking, bittersweet ending, which I loved. I have a whole vlog of me reading this where I like sob dramatically at the end, so you should definitely go watch that. And I'm gonna put this on God tier because I love these characters. Love this world, love what Roshni Chakshi did with the series. Okay, the next one is The Burning God by R.F. Kuang. Many of you might be wondering why I didn't put this book or The Dragon Republic on my top 10 books of 2021 video. The reason is because I actually read The Poppy War in 2020 and I put that book on my top 10 books of 2020 video, so I didn't want to repeat the series in another top 10 video. But just know, those books are God tier, up there. Some of my favorites. Yeah, nothing compares to The Poppy War. Like I've been trying to find a fantasy series that is like similar to it that gives me the same like rabid vibes, and nothing compares. So yeah, Burning God is going up there to God tier, and I'm just gonna pull up The Dragon Republic as well. Yeah, fantastic, fantastic fantasy series based off of the Sino-Japanese Wars. Some really crazy cutthroat characters and amazing plot twists as well. Okay, the next one is The Death of Jane Lawrence, which is a gothic horror that I honestly thought I was gonna love and end up basically hating. I wouldn't say hate is a strong word. I did really enjoy the first 30% of the book, but once I got into it, it felt really repetitive and I just didn't like where it was going. I thought it just got quite boring by the end and I wasn't really invested in the characters all that much. And it didn't really have many like interesting side characters as well, which was disappointing. So overall, this one was like definitely a disappointment for me. I was very close to DNFing it, but I decided not to. All right, the next one is The Electric Kingdom, and this one is a really interesting YA sci-fi. It involves different timelines as well, and involves a post-apocalyptic world after like a virus shatters the world and wipes out a bunch of the population. But yeah, this one was a really interesting read. I think for that reason, I really enjoyed it. Like I was very intrigued by it. I don't think it's my favorite, but it was still a really enjoyable read. Okay. Alrighty, the next book is The Henna Artist by Alka Joshi. This one was definitely a really fantastic read. It is a historical fiction set in the 1950s in India, and it follows a main character who's fleeing an abusive marriage, and she is sort of settled in Jaipur, and she has become a henna artist for the wealthy women in Jaipur. And so she's built this new life and years have passed, and she has a successful business, and that's when her younger sister from her life away comes to find her and is looking to live with her. And so the main character has to deal with this part of her family that she hasn't had to deal with before and sort of look after someone in a way that she hasn't had to before. She's been on her own for a long time. Overall, it was a really fantastic book. I love like the politics and the gossip going on in Jaipur, and I love the main character herself. So I definitely think this one goes into Makes My Heart Ache because I really loved the characters and like I was so invested in the main character's story and I was like sobbing by the end, I remember. And yeah, overall, fantastic book. Alrighty, the next book is The House on the Cerulean Sea by TJ Klune. This one is such an adorable book. It's like a Pixar fantasy movie. I would say it's set in like an alternate version of our world where magic exists, and like there are these children with like these strange magical powers and like different mutations and stuff, and oftentimes they are abandoned and put in these orphanages. And so the main character is sort of like this inspector for these orphanages, and so he's going off to this like island, to this house on the Cerulean Sea, where there's this orphanage run by this very mysterious man with all these magical children, and he ends up like falling for the guy who runs the orphanage and, you know, really caring for the kids and starting to look at his life and everything he's been doing in a very new light. So yeah, it was just really, really adorable. I don't think it's like at the level of Breaks My Heartache, but it was definitely a really, really enjoyable read, and also like kind of like a new little favorite. So I'm gonna put it there. Okay, the next one is The Inheritance of Orquídea Divina by Zoraida Cordova. I really, really love this one. I read this in September, and it was like part spooky and magical realism and just a really cool book overall. Basically, it involves this woman named Orquídea Divina who moves to the States fleeing something going on with her previous life. She sets up in this small town in the States, and she ends up having like multiple husbands and multiple descendants and everything. And the book actually starts like many years later when she's about to die, and she sends out a letter to all of her descendants telling them to return to her home and collect their inheritances. From there, some crazy and magical and strange things start to happen, and people start dying, and it was just so interesting. I really, really enjoyed it, like thoroughly enjoyed it. It's not like a super new fave, but it's definitely a new weird little fave because it was just like so cool and interesting, and I just love the way that it was done. Okay, the next one is The Love Hypothesis by Ali Hazelwood. This one was such a cute romance. It is basically a romance between a PhD student and like a professor, and it's a fake dating romance as well, and it was overall just super cute. I read this for my Patreon book club in November of 2021, and yeah, it was just adorable. I think it's like probably a new weird little fave. I do think it has like general appeal, but I don't think it's quite like Makes My Heartache, but it's not just thoroughly enjoyed. All right, the next book is The Maidens by Alex Michaelids. This one is a thriller that I actually really enjoyed. I don't think I enjoyed it as much as his other book, The Silent Patient, but this one was still fun and interesting, and I was really intrigued by like the Greek mythology aspects of it. So I don't know, I feel like I still thoroughly enjoyed it. I don't think it was just okay. I think it was a good thriller. I don't read a lot of thrillers, but it was still an enjoyable one for me. All right, the next one is The Midnight Library by Matt Haig. I know a lot of people either love this one or hate to love it, and I mean, I feel like it was just a good book. I enjoyed it. I don't think it's like, you know, top tier, the best thing I've ever read. I listened to it entirely on the audiobook. It's a very short book, and it's just like about second chances and coming to terms with your regrets. So I'm gonna put this under thoroughly enjoyed because I still enjoyed it. All right, The Night Tiger. This one was one that I really hope to enjoy a lot more than I did. It is a bit of a historical fantasy, I would say, set in Malaysia, I think, and it had some really interesting characters. I honestly don't remember most of this book. It had a crazy plot as well, and I think this one, while I really enjoyed the beginning, I think it just got really weird by the end, and I wasn't really invested in the plot, so by the end of it, I just felt like it was just okay. So I'm gonna put it in just okay. Next is The Silent Patient. As I said, I enjoyed this one more than The Maidens, so I think it's gonna go into like new weird little fave because like I actually thoroughly enjoyed it. I was so invested by the end, and I thought it was like a really great twist, and I loved the like plot as well, and I loved how messed up the characters were. So yeah, it was like a really enjoyable thriller for me. Okay, next we have The Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller, which I think we can all guess which tier this is gonna go into. It's freaking fantastic. I have a whole vlog of me crying about this book. Absolutely fantastic. Such a great read, and if you love Greek mythology, if you love tragedies, if you love books that will break your heart, if you wanted something gay, fantastic book. So this is gonna go into God tier. Ooh, next we have The Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires by Grady Hendrix. I freaking love this book so much. Such a fantastic horror novel. It involves vampires and suburban southern stay-at-home moms pitting them against each other, and it was just fantastic. It had so many interesting discussions about the value of domestic work, race, and privilege, and just so many other things, and the lengths we will go to believe a straight white male, even if they are a predator. And it was just so interesting overall. I absolutely loved it. It was like a book that really took me by surprise because I went into it thinking I really wouldn't like it. So this one is actually going to go into God tier because I thought it was just so well done and like such an enjoyable read as well, but also like a really thrilling horror. Okay, next we have The Stationery Shop by Marjan Kamali, another historical fiction that I absolutely love, love, love. This one just makes my heart ache in all the best ways. I felt so much for the characters. It involves a romance that goes wrong in 1950s Tehran, Iran, and just the way that the story goes and like the heartbreaking nature of the romance is just everything I need in historical fiction. So I absolutely loved it. I think it definitely goes into makes my heart ache tier. Okay, the next one is The Truants, and this one is a dark academia that I actually ended up hating and DNFing. I got about halfway through. I just really wasn't vibing with the characters. Originally, when I like first started it, I actually was enjoying it, but then the further I got, I just like hated the main character more and more, and I just found the obsessions really stupid, and I just didn't really like anything that was going on or the characters, and I didn't really want to see it go further, so I just stopped reading it. So yeah, that one was definitely a disappointment and a DNF. A few people recommended it to me and I just ended up hating it. The next one is Velvet Was the Night by Silvia Moreno Garcia. This is definitely a really interesting read. It is a bit of a noir pulp fiction set in, I think, 1970s Mexico. And it was a really interesting read, but I don't think it was like my favorite. I do think I enjoyed it because of the way that Silvia Moreno Garcia writes her characters. Like I think they're just so vivid, but this definitely wasn't my favorite of her books. So I think this one's just gonna go into thoroughly enjoyed. Next, we have Verity by Colleen Hoover. This is a thriller, one of Colleen Hoover's only thrillers. And this was one that came so hyped from Book Talk TikTok, and I had high expectations for it. And while I did thoroughly enjoy this one, and I read it in like maybe a day, and I just wanted to know how it was gonna end, I totally called the twist at the end. And so I was sort of like disappointed by that aspect, and I felt like it was a little bit predictable. So in that way, it wasn't like a new favorite, but I did think it was enjoyable. And if you're like new to thrillers and you're looking for one, it's a great one to pick up. All right, the next one is Want by Cindy Pon, and this is a book that I really, really, really wanted to love, but I honestly didn't really love it. I thought it was just okay. I struggled to connect with the characters, and it just started in a weird way, and I felt like the pacing was always off, and I just wanted to love it more, but I just didn't. So yeah, this is a YA sci-fi set in like a futuristic version of Taiwan, and it had like a really interesting setup, and I think the world was very cool in the way she imagined things, but it just really fell flat for me for some reason. Okay, next book is White Smoke by Tiffany D. Jackson. This one was so freaking good. One of the best horrors I've ever read. Best YA horrors. And it is basically a haunted house story, and it was just really, really well done. Like, I loved all the reasons for the crazy horrific things going on, and I love the main character. She was a really flawed main character, and I just love the way that Tiffany D. Jackson writes her teens and like her thrillers and stuff. So this was no different. It was just fantastic. I think it definitely goes into makes my heart ache because I really felt for the characters, and I think it had some really great messages to it. I don't think it's quite like God tier for me, but it was fantastic. Okay, next we have Yoke by Mary H.K. Choi. This one is definitely like up there. This is one of my favorite books of 2021, and a lot of people have been asking me actually like they didn't, you know, enjoy her previous two books. Should they read Yoke? And I definitely think yes, you should. I personally didn't love Emergency Contact or Permanent Record. I liked Permanent Record more, but I didn't love them. Yoke, on the other hand, I feel like because it focuses on the sibling relationship, on the relationship between the two sisters, and also like the main character's sort of psyche and like what she's going through, I feel like those elements made it such an amazing book. I really related to the main character, her self-deprecating dark humor. I really loved that, and yeah, it was just overall a really fantastic book. So if you're looking for a YA contemporary that will just like gut you, this is the one to pick up. So it's going in God tier because we love it. Okay, next we have You Can't Be Serious by Cal Penn, which if you've watched my top 10 books of 2021, you know I really, really loved. This is just a memoir that was just so thoroughly enjoyable, and I just loved listening to Cal Penn as he was narrating the audiobook as well. And I just really related to his story, and I thought it was just really well told and just, you know, a fun and enjoyable read. And it's just up there for me. I don't know why, but it's like God tier for me for some reason, even though it's like a memoir. So it's going up there to God tier because I loved it so much. Okay, and then the final book that we have is Zahra Hussain Is Here, which is a YA contemporary, and it's a really short one. I honestly don't remember too much about this one. It basically follows a Pakistani American teen whose family immigrated when she was a child, and so she is not completely a citizen, and they've been waiting on a green card for a long time, but she's dealing with some like racist people at her school. And then there's also a bit of a sapphic romance as well, which I thought was really cute, and I like that she was queer and that her family was okay with it. So yeah, it was just a fun, enjoyable read, and you know, had some interesting topics that it talked about. I don't think it was amazing, but it was a good book. So I'm gonna put this under thoroughly enjoyed. And with that, we have my entire list of the books I read in 2021 ranked according to these tiers. I feel like we have a lot under thoroughly enjoyed and quite a lot in like the top tiers. I feel like there's very few in the bottom tiers, which I'm quite happy with, and I kind of knew going into this. I will say I am very picky about what I pick up because I always go into books with the intention that I really want to love it rather than not like it. So yeah, I can be very picky with what I read. And usually if I'm like not enjoying a book, I'll just sort of set it down and start reading something else. So it's sort of like a soft DNF in the sense that like I will probably come back to this later, but I'm just gonna put it down for now, and I'm not like for sure saying I hate it, I don't want to continue or ever read it again, which is the case with some of the DNFs on this list. But yeah, so yeah, I think this was a really good reading year, and it was just like interesting to see what I thought about, you know, all these books in comparison to each other. I'd love to hear from you guys what you thought of my ranking here, if you thought that there was books that I put on like God tier that should have been on disappointment tier for you, or if there was something that you felt shouldn't have been put on a disappointment tier and should have been like God tier or something. Whatever it is, I would love to hear your opinions on my ranking here, and just hear what you guys thought of your reading in 2021. If you had to rank the books that you read, do you think more of them would be on the top end or on the bottom end? Would love to hear from all of you, and thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. Go check out my Instagram, Twitter, Goodreads, TikTok, and Patreon in the description down below if you want to get more content from me, and I will see you in my next video, and I hope you have a wonderful new year. And with that said, please remember that the story ain't over. Bye!